Welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we are not just looking at an organ. We are looking at a metabolic universe, really. We're tackling the chemical factory,
The central processing unit.
the silent workhorse of the human body. We are talking about the liver.
Huh.
And honestly, looking at this stack of research from Robbins and Cotran and Underwood's pathology, I'm realizing I have vastly underestimated this thing my entire life.
It is so easy to underestimate because it's quiet. You know, the heart beats, the lungs breathe, the stomach growls.
Right.
The liver just sits there, hidden under your ribs, doing about 500 distinct functions simultaneously. But you were right. In pathology, the liver is where the rubber meets the road. It's where metabolism meets toxicity.
Okay.
And if there's one phrase I want to hang over the door for this entire conversation, it is this: flow determines fate.
Flow determines fate. That sounds a bit poetic for a lump of tissue that processes toxins. What does that actually mean in a biological sense?
It means that unlike other organs where structure is just a scaffold, in the liver, the specific direction and the pressure of blood flow dictate everything.
Everything.
It dictates which cells get fed, which cells get killed by toxins, and how the organ ultimately fails. If you disrupt the flow, you don't just get a blockage, you get a fundamental change in the organ's identity.
Okay, we are going to unpack that because it sounds absolutely crucial. But first, let's set the stage for everyone listening. We are pulling heavily from Robbins and Underwood's today, specifically their chapters on the liver.
And as always, our goal here is not to read the textbook to you. That would be boring and, frankly, a waste of your time.
Exactly. This isn't an audiobook.
Right. Our mission is to build a conceptual map. We want to synthesize these two massive texts to give you the mechanisms and the systems thinking, the why, and the how.
Think of this deep dive as the scaffold.
That's a great way to put it. Once you have the scaffold, you can go back and read the chapters, and all those details will actually stick because you'll have a place to put them.
So consider this your companion guide. Do not skip the reading, but use this to make the reading make sense. Here is our roadmap. We are going to start with the architecture, this whole concept of flow.
Then we'll look at how the liver gets injured and the dramatic ways it tries to repair itself.
We will then slide into the big monster of liver pathology cirrhosis.
And after that, we'll break down the specific attackers: viruses, alcohol, metabolic diseases, and finally, tumors.
It's a journey from, the microscopic geometry to systemic collapse.
That's it, exactly.
Okay, let's start with section 1, the architecture of flow. When I looked at the anatomy in Robbins, the first thing that hit me was the plumbing. It's just weird. It's not like a kidney or a brain. It has a dual blood supply.
It is completely unique. Most organs are pretty simple. An artery brings fresh oxygenated blood in, the organ uses it, and then a vein takes the dirty blood away.
Simple in, simple out.
The liver complicates this. It receives about 30 to 40% of its blood from the hepatic artery, which is your standard fresh oxygen-rich blood from the heart.
Okay, that makes sense. Every cell needs oxygen. No surprises there. But the other 60 to 70% comes from the portal vein. And looking at what's in the portal vein, it sounds like a sewer.
Sewer might be a bit harsh, but it's certainly not pristine. The portal vein drains the entire gastrointestinal tract. Everything you just ate, everything you absorbed, every drug you swallowed.
Wait, and also bacteria.
And importantly, every bit of bacteria that managed to sneak through your gut wall, it all dumps into the portal vein.
So the liver is effectively feeding itself on the bodies.
Right.
Well, it's trash. Why would evolution design it that way? That seems incredibly risky.
It's a security trade-off. Ideally, we call those things nutrients, but yes, it's also a load of baggage. The liver is the gatekeeper.
The bouncer at the door of the bloodstream.
Precisely. Before that blood can be allowed to circulate to your brain or your heart, it must be inspected. The liver sacrifices its own prime oxygen supply to ensure that it gets first crack at cleaning the blood from the gut.
So it filters, it synthesizes proteins, it detoxifies drugs.
All before letting that blood exit into the hepatic vein and then back to the heart. It's a massive processing plant.
So these two vessels, the fresh artery and the, let's call it the gut process portal vein, they enter the liver at the porta hepatis. Underwood points out that they travel in parallel.
Right. They branch and branch together, getting smaller and smaller until they reach the microscopic level. And this is where we have to talk about geometry. If you want to understand liver disease, you have to stop thinking of the liver as a blob and start thinking of it as a grid.
A grid, okay? And we have two competing models for this grid, the lobule and the ussinus. Robbins spends a lot of time on the lobule, the hexagon.
The hexagon is the classic anatomical model. It's what you see first. Picture a perfect hexagon. In the dead center, you have a drain. That's the central vein.
Okay, drain in the middle.
And at each of the 6 corners, you have something called a portal triad.
And a triad is just those 3 tubes bundled together: the artery, the vein, and a bile duct.
Exactly. A branch of the portal vein, a branch of the hepatic artery, and a bile duct. In this hexagonal model, blood flows from the corners, from the triads, inward toward that central drain.
So it's like 6 rivers flowing into a central lake.
A great analogy, and it's really good for navigation. If you're looking at a slide under a microscope, you look for the hexagon, it helps you get your bearings.
But, and this is a big but, the sources suggest that for pathology, for understanding why cells die, the hexagon is actually kind of misleading. We need the diamond, the acinus.
Yes. The acinus is the functional unit. It ignores the visible landmarks like the hexagon shape, and it focuses entirely on the blood gradient.
The flow.
The flow. Imagine a diamond shape. 2 opposite corners of the diamond are the portal triads, which are the supply. The other 2 corners are the central veins, which are the drains.
Okay, I'm visualizing the diamond. Supply at 2 ends, drains at the other 2. How does this help us understand disease?
It allows us to divide the tissue into 3 zones based on the quality of the blood at that location. Zone 1 is the periportal zone. It's the part of the diamond closest to the blood supply, the triads.
So zone 1 gets the first sip of the milkshake.
Exactly. It gets the freshest blood. Zone 3, on the other hand, is the pericentral zone. It's closest to the drain, the central vein. And zone 2 is just the transition in between.
Okay, so zone 1 gets blood that's high in oxygen.
Correct. But it also sees the highest concentration of toxins coming directly from the gut.
Right. First crack at the good stuff and the bad stuff.
But zone 3 is at the end of the line. By the time the blood washes over zone 1 and zone 2, the oxygen has been mostly used up.
So zone 3 is living in a constant state of near suffocation.
It's hypoxic, yes. It has the lowest oxygen tension in the whole system. But here is the kicker, and this is where that systems thinking comes in. Zone 3 is also the site of the highest metabolic activity.
Wait. The cells that have the least oxygen are doing the hardest work. That seems like terrible urban planning.
It does seem counterintuitive, but it's where the liver has packed its cytochrome P450 enzymes, the detox machinery.
So this creates a specific vulnerability.
A profound one. We call this zonal vulnerability because zone 3 is already on the ragged edge of oxygen starvation. If you have a drop in blood pressure, say, from shock or heart failure or a massive bleed, which zone dies first?
Zone 3. It just suffocates.
Instantly. And because it has all those P450 enzymes...
That's where drugs get broken down.
Precisely. And sometimes that breakdown process creates toxic byproducts. Since zone 3 has the most enzymes, it makes the most toxin. So if you overdose on, say, acetaminophen...
Tylenol.
Yes. Zone 3 effectively poisons itself. It gets a double whammy.
So zone 3 is the canary in the coal mine.
That's the perfect term for it. If I look at a slide and I see centrilobular necrosis death around the central vein, I immediately know I'm dealing with either ischemia, meaning lack of blood flow, or a specific drug toxin. The anatomy tells me the cause.
It's like a geographical fingerprint of the disease.
It is.
Let's zoom in even further. We got the zones. Who lives there? We have the hepatocytes, obviously, the main liver cells.
The main workers. They're arranged in these plates, or cords, usually just 1 cell thick. Imagine rows of houses with little streets in between.
Okay, and the streets are the sinusoids.
Yes. The blood vessels. But these aren't normal streets. The lining of these blood vessels, the endothelium, is fenestrated.
Fenestrated just means it has windows, right? Pores.
Holes, exactly, like a sieve or a colander. This is absolutely critical. In a normal capillary, the wall is solid. Things have to be actively transported across.
Right.
In the liver, the blood plasma needs to wash directly over the hepatocytes so they can do their job. So the sinusoids have these open pores. The plasma flows right through the holes into a space between the vessel and the cell.
Called the space of Dissy. Sounds like a sci-fi location.
It's the business end of the liver. It's the microscopic space where all the exchange happens. But there are a couple of other important cells hanging out in there.
The supporting cast.
First, you have the Kupffer cells. They're actually in the sinusoid, in the bloodstream. They are the resident macrophages.
The security guards.
The security guards. They are there to catch any bacteria that made it past the gut wall. They're the last line of defense.
Okay, and then there's someone else living in the space of Dissy who you said is very important. The hepatic stellate cell, also called the Ito cell.
Yes. Now, Robbins describes them as being involved in vitamin A storage in a healthy liver. They sound pretty chill. just hanging out, holding on to vitamins.
So in health, they're dormant, they're sleeping.
But in disease, the stellate cell is the main villain. It's the Hulk. When the liver is chronically injured, these cells wake up. They get activated.
What wakes them up?
Chronic inflammation. Cytokines. They lose their vitamin A, they change shape, and they transform into myofibroblasts.
Myofibroblasts.
Right.
So muscle fiber builders.
Essentially scar factories. They start pumping out collagen-thick, tough scar tissue directly into the space of DISI.
Oh, so they're clogging up the main workspace?
They're paving it over. Keep that in mind, because that transformation is the engine of cirrhosis.
Got it. Sleeping monster in the space of DISI. And quickly, before we leave architecture, we track the blood going in. Where does the bile go?
The opposite direction, that's the countercurrent flow.
Ah, okay.
Hepatocytes make bile to help digest fats. They secrete it into these tiny channels between the cells called canaliculi. It then flows outward, away from the central vein, toward the portal tracts, where it collects in bile ducts.
So blood flows in toward the center, bile flows out toward the edges.
You've got the map. The whole system is designed for maximum efficiency of exchange and drainage.
Until it breaks. Okay, section 2. Mechanisms of injury and repair. The liver takes a beating. How does it show us it's struggling before it actually, dies?
The first stage is reversible injury. The cell is hurt, but if the stress stops, it can recover. The most common sign of this is steatosis, or fatty change.
This is literally just fat building up inside the liver cell.
Yes. The hepatocyte is a metabolic factory. If you ship it too much raw material, too much fat, like in obesity, or if you damage its ability to export the finished product, which is what alcohol does, the fat just piles up.
Like inventory that can't leave the warehouse.
Exactly. Under the microscope, you see these big, clear bubbles, these lipid droplets pushing the nucleus off to the side.
Robbins also mentions ballooning degeneration. That sounds, well, unpleasant.
It's a sign of significant stress, more severe than just simple fat. The cell's cytoskeleton is injured, and it swells up with water and proteins. The cytoplasm gets wisty and clear. This is a classic hallmark of what we call steatohepatitis.
Which is fat plus inflammation.
Right. It's what you see in both severe alcohol-related liver disease and metabolic fatty liver disease.
And sometimes inside those balloon cells, you see these clumped, ropey pink blobs called Mallory-Dink bodies. I feel like in pathology, if something has a person's name on it, it's important.
It is. Mallory-Dink bodies are tangled messes of damaged intermediate filaments. Imagine the skeleton of the cell collapsing into a twisted heap in the corner.
That's a strong visual.
It strongly suggests alcoholic hepatitis, though you can see it in other conditions too. It's a sign of profound cellular distress.
So that's the cell crying for help. What happens when the help doesn't come? We get irreversible injury, cell death.
Right. And there are two main ways cells die. Apoptosis is one. That's programmed cell death. It's very neat and tidy. The cell shrinks, condenses, and gets eaten by a neighbor.
It cleans up after itself.
It does. In viral hepatitis, you see these little shrunken eosinophilic, meaning bright pink cells called Councilman bodies or acetylate bodies. That's apoptosis.
And the other way is messier.
Much messier. Necrosis. That's when the cell is murdered, essentially. It ruptures, spills its guts, and causes a lot of inflammation.
Yeah, again, the pattern matters. We talked about zonal necrosis in zone 3, but there's also spotty necrosis.
Spotty, or focal necrosis, sounds random because it is. It's a single cell dying here, another one dying over there. This is very typical of acute viral hepatitis. The liver is kind of sprinkled with dead cells, but the overall architecture holds up.
Okay, so that's manageable. The scary one listed in the outline is bridging necrosis.
Bridging is the tipping point. It's a game changer. Imagine a wildfire that doesn't just burn one tree, but burns a clear path connecting one part of the forest to another.
A fire break in reverse.
That's it. Bridging necrosis means a band of dead cells connects a central vein to a portal tract, or two central veins to each other. It creates a bridge of death across the lobule.
Why is that specifically so bad?
Because it breaks the structural integrity. It snaps the beams of the house. And this brings us to the topic of regeneration. Underwood makes a beautiful point here. The liver is arguably the most regenerative organ in the body.
Right, you hear stories about living donors giving half their liver and it grows back.
It's true. You can cut off 70% of a rat's liver, and it grows back to full size in weeks. So the question is, why do humans get permanent liver failure? If it can grow back, why doesn't it just fix cirrhosis?
It must come down to the scaffold.
It comes down to the scaffold. Hepatocytes are stable cells. They're not dividing all the time, but they are ready to divide if needed. But they need a frame to grow on. That frame is made of a delicate protein called reticulin.
So if that reticulin frame is there, they can line up perfectly and rebuild the structure.
Exactly, like rebuilding a brick wall on an existing foundation. But in bridging necrosis, the foundation itself is destroyed. It collapses.
Ah.
So when the hepatocytes try to go back, they have no guide. They have no blueprint. They just grow into disorganized clumps. We call these nodules.
So instead of a neat city grid, you get a chaotic shantytown.
A shantytown surrounded by scar tissue. And that, right there, is the definition of cirrhosis.
Section 3. Cirrhosis. This is the big one. And the text really emphasizes that cirrhosis isn't a single disease. It's an end-stage pathway.
Right. It's the final common destination for a lot of different journeys. It doesn't matter if the injury was vodka, a virus, or bad genes. The endpoint looks the same.
So what are the defining features?
Cirrhosis is defined by 3 things, morphologically. 1, bridging fibrous septa, the scars. 2, parenchymal nodules, those chaotic clumps of regenerating cells. And 3, the total disruption of the vascular architecture.
Let's go back to our villain, the stellate cell. This is his moment to shine, isn't it?
It is. This is the third act. Chronic inflammation from whatever cause triggers the local immune cells, the Kupffer cells, to release cytokine signals like TNF and TGF-beta.
And those are like an alarm bell for the stellate cell.
They scream at the stellate cell to wake up. The stellate cell transforms, as we said, and starts dumping massive amounts of collagen into the space of DISI.
And this leads to something called capillarization of the sinusoids. I want to make sure I really understand this. The sieve gets clogged.
It's worse than clogged. The sieve gets plastered over. Those fenestrations, those windows we talked about are lost. The delicate, leaky sinusoid turns into a rigid, solid pipe, like a normal capillary.
So the hepatocytes, the liver cells, are now behind a wall. They can't access the blood anymore.
Exactly. They are physically separated from the plasma. They can't get nutrients efficiently, and they can't clean the blood efficiently. They start to starve and fail. But physically, this creates a massive, massive problem for flow.
Resistance. A traffic jam.
Catastrophic traffic jam. The liver becomes a rock. The blood trying to enter from the portal vein hits a brick wall. It can't push through. So the pressure in the entire portal system skyrockets.
Portal hypertension. This explains the clinical symptoms, doesn't it? It's just plumbing backing up.
It is purely mechanical at this point. If the pressure is high in the portal vein, fluid starts to weep out of the surface of the liver and the gut into the peritoneal cavity. That excites the belly full of fluid.
And the blood has to go somewhere. It's trying to get back to the heart.
It is desperate to get back to the heart, so it finds tiny, unused collateral veins and forces them open. It creates bypasses. It bypasses the liver entirely.
And that causes varices.
You get massive snake-like veins in the esophagus called varices.
Which are just ticking time bombs.
Absolutely. If they burst, you can bleed to death in minutes. You get hemorrhoids. You can even get the caput medusa veins radiating from the belly button that look like Medusa's head. It's all the body's desperate attempt to get around the blockage.
And because the blood is bypassing the liver through these shunts, it's not getting cleaned.
Exactly. The gatekeeper is bypassed. All those toxins from the gut, like ammonia, which the liver normally turns into harmless urea, go straight to the brain.
Hepatic encephalopathy.
Brain fog, confusion, a characteristic flapping tremor called asterixis, and eventually coma. It's a poisoning of the brain because the filter is clogged and bypassed.
And at the same time, the factory itself is shut down. The liver isn't making things anymore.
Correct. It's not making albumin, which is the main protein in your blood. So your blood loses its osmotic pressure, and you get even more fluid leakage into your tissues edema.
And clotting factors.
It's not making clotting factors, so you bruise and bleed easily. And interestingly, it's not metabolizing hormones correctly.
Robbins mentions estrogen specifically.
The liver is responsible for breaking down estrogen. In a man with cirrhosis, estrogen levels rise. This causes testicular atrophy, breast development, which is called gynecomastia.
And those spider angiomas you see on the skin.
Exactly. Those are dilated blood vessels caused by the excess estrogen. It's terrifying how one structural change fibrosis cascades into a total system failure.
Flow determines fate. When the flow stops, the system crashes.
That's the lesson of cirrhosis.
Let's move to the specific culprits. Section 4. Viral hepatitis, the so-called alphabet viruses, A, B, C, D, E.
The best way to organize these is to group them. Let's group A and E together.
Okay, the viruses.
And vowels affect the bowels. That's a good mnemonic. They are transmitted fecal-orally, contaminated water, improperly handled food.
So these are acute infections.
The key takeaway for A and E is that they are acute. You get sick, you feel terrible, you turn yellow, but your immune system almost always clears it. They do not cause chronic liver disease.
With one very scary exception mentioned in the outline.
Hepatitis E in pregnancy. For reasons we still don't fully understand, hepatitis E in a pregnant woman has a staggering mortality rate, up to 20%. It causes fulminant liver failure. That is a high-yield fact that saves lives.
Absolutely critical. Okay, then we have the bloodborne gang, B, C, and D. Let's start with hepatitis B. Robbins calls it the complex one.
Hepatitis B is fascinating. It's a DNA virus, but here's the essential twist. The virus itself doesn't hurt the liver. It is not directly cytopathic.
Wait, so the virus is just camping out in the cell, not breaking anything?
Yeah.
Then why does the liver die?
Because the police arrive. Your immune system, specifically your CD8 positive cytotoxic T cells, recognizes that the hepatocyte is infected and decides the only way to get rid of the virus is to kill the host cell.
It's a hostage situation.
It is the perfect analogy. The virus is the hostage taker inside the house. The police, your immune system, decide to blow up the house to stop the bad guy. All the damage to the liver is collateral damage from that immune response.
That explains why the outcome varies so much between people.
It explains everything. If you are a healthy adult with a strong immune system, you get a massive acute war. Your T cells kill all the infected cells, you feel very sick for a while, but you win. You clear the virus.
But if your immune system is weak...
Like in a newborn baby infected at birth, the immune system is immature, the police don't attack, so the virus just stays there, replicating quietly. The baby doesn't get sick, but becomes a chronic carrier. Over 90% of infected newborns become chronic carriers.
And what do we see on the biopsy? Ground glass hepatocytes.
Yeah. That's the cytoplasm of the liver cell, just packed full of hepatitis B surface antigen. It creates this hazy, pink, frosted glass appearance. It's a telltale sign of chronic infection.
Now, hepatitis C, the chronic one.
If Hep B is a loud war, Hep C is a silent 30-year siege. It's an RNA virus, and its hallmark is deception. The acute infection is usually completely silent. You don't turn yellow. You probably just think you have a mild flu. You don't even know you have it.
But unlike Hep B, your body almost never clears it. The stats are incredible.
Around 80% of people who get hepatitis C develop chronic disease. The reason is that Hep C is a master of disguise. Its RNA polymerase is very error-prone, so it mutates constantly. It creates what we call quasi-species within the same patient.
So the police show up looking for a guy in a red shirt, and by the time they get there, he's wearing a blue shirt.
Precisely. The immune system is constantly one step behind. This creates a smoldering, low-grade inflammation that just grinds on for 20 or 30 years until one day you wake up with cirrhosis.
And histologically, it has a few hallmarks, like lymphoid aggregates.
Yes, you often see these collections of lymphocytes right in the portal tracts. And for some reason, hepatitis C is also strongly associated with steatosis, with fatty change.
Okay, and finally the weird one. Hepatitis D, the Delta agent.
I call it the parasite. Hep D is a defective virus. It's just a piece of RNA in a trench coat. It has no code of its own. It literally cannot replicate unless hepatitis B is already there to provide the surface antigen on the coat.
So you can never get D unless you already have B.
Correct. You can get them at the same time, which is a co-infection, and that's bad. But what's really bad is if you are a chronic carrier of Hep B and then you catch Hep D, that's a superinfection.
And that's worse.
It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. It dramatically accelerates the progression to cirrhosis.
Moving to Section 5, drugs and toxins. We established the liver as the filter, so it takes the hits. The big one, the classic example, is acetaminophen or paracetamol.
Tylenol. It is the #1 cause of acute liver failure in the Western world, and it's a perfect example of what we call predictable toxicity. It is strictly dose-dependent. A little is fine, a lot is deadly.
Walk us through the chemistry. Why does a simple headache pill have the potential to kill your liver?
Normally, your liver processes it safely through a couple of main pathways, but a small fraction is shunted to those cytochrome P450 enzymes we talked about.
Back in Zone 3.
Back in Zone 3. The P450s turn it into a highly toxic metabolite called NIPQI.
NOPQI. Sounds like a bad guy in a sci-fi movie.
It is a free radical nasty. Under normal circumstances, your liver immediately handcuffs NAPQI with a molecule called glutathione. It neutralizes it instantly, no problem.
But you only have a limited bucket of glutathione.
You have a finite supply. If you take a massive overdose of Tylenol, you generate a tidal wave of NAPQI. You completely empty your bucket of glutathione.
The handcuffs are all used up.
The handcuffs are gone, the NAPQI runs free, and where does it run free?
In zone 3, where it was made.
Exactly. It builds up and destroys the cells in zone 3. You get massive central lobular necrosis, acute liver failure. It's a tragic but very predictable chemical injury.
Section 6. Steatotic liver disease. We used to just call this alcoholic liver disease, but now the field recognizes this twin condition called MASLD.
Metabolic dysfunction-associated steatotic liver disease. It is a mouthful, but it reflects the reality that alcohol and the constellation of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and insulin resistance can produce almost identical pathology in the liver.
The end result looks the same. Let's look at alcohol first. Why does booze make the liver fatty? We touched on it, but let's detail it.
It's a metabolic trick. Metabolizing alcohol produces a huge amount of molecule called NADH. This floods the cell and shifts the entire chemical balance. It sends a powerful signal to the cell's machinery that says, stop burning fat for energy. We have plenty of energy from the alcohol.
So the cell stops burning fat.
And it starts synthesizing more fat, so you get a double whammy of less fat leaving and more fat being made. The cell just hoards it.
That's steatosis. And it's reversible if you stop drinking.
Completely reversible. But if you keep drinking, you can progress to inflammation. Alcoholic steatohepatitis. This is a much more serious, acute illness.
This is where we see the neutrophils.
Yes. Alcoholic hepatitis is unique because the inflammatory cells that are recruited are neutrophils. And you usually think of neutrophils for bacterial infections. We don't know exactly why they show up here, but they do. And we see the Mallory dank bodies we mentioned earlier.
And the fibrosis has a very specific look. Underwood calls it chicken wire.
It's a very specific and memorable visual. The scar tissue, the fibrosis, wraps around individual hepatocytes, specifically in zone 3. It looks like a wire mesh fence trapping the cells one by one.
Now let's switch to the other twin, MASLD, which used to be called NAFLD. This is the modern epidemic.
It is the liver manifestation of metabolic syndrome. Insulin resistance is the fundamental driver. The body is awash in fatty acids because the fat cells are dysfunctional, and the liver just soaks them up.
And just like with alcohol, the dangerous form is when it becomes inflamed. NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis.
Correct. Simple fatty liver, or MASL, is usually okay. But in some people, for reasons that are still being worked out, that fat causes oxidative stress and triggers inflammation. That's MASH, or metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis.
And it looks just like alcoholic hepatitis under the microscope.
It can look identical. You see ballooning, you can see Mallory dank bodies, you see fibrosis, maybe with fewer neutrophils, but it's the same pattern of injury.
And the terrifying thing you hear is that many people who show up with cryptogenic cirrhosis, where doctors used to say, we don't know why your liver failed, we now think many of them actually had burned out NASH.
That is exactly right. As the scarring becomes overwhelming, the fat actually disappears. So you're left with this mystery cirrhosis that was actually metabolic in origin all along.
Section 7. Inherited metabolic diseases. These are the genetic typos that can destroy the organ. First up, hemochromatosis.
Iron overload, usually from a mutation in the HFE gene. Normally, your gut is very smart. It only absorbs the tiny amount of iron you need each day.
Right.
In hemochromatosis, the gut's off switch is broken. It absorbs all the iron from your diet. And the problem is, the body has no good way to excrete excess iron, so it just piles up year after year.
It piles up in the liver, the heart, the pancreas, the skin.
Everywhere. And iron is toxic. Unbound iron participates in something called the Fenton reaction. Essentially, it acts like a spark in a powder keg.
Yeah.
It generates free radicals that literally shred cellular machinery. It's like rusting from the inside out.
The classic clinical triad is fascinating. Bronze diabetes.
It paints a perfect picture. You get cirrhosis from the liver damage, diabetes because the iron kills the insulin-producing cells in the pancreas, and bronze skin because the iron deposition stimulates melanin production.
You can literally diagnose it across the room sometimes.
You can.
Next on the list is Wilson disease.
This is copper overload, a mutation in a gene called ATP7B. This gene makes a protein that's supposed to load copper into the bile so you can excrete it.
So the copper trash can is nailed shut.
That's a great way to think of it. Copper builds up in the liver, kills the hepatocytes, and then spills out into the bloodstream. And it has a strange affinity for other tissues. It loves to deposit in the brain, especially the basal ganglia, which can cause psychosis or Parkinson's-like tremors.
And the eyes, the famous Kaiser-Fleischer rings.
A golden brown ring of copper that deposits around the edge of the iris. If you see a young patient with liver disease and new onset psychiatric problems, you have to look at their eyes.
It's a critical physical finding.
Life-saving.
The third one here is alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. This one connects the liver and the lungs in a really interesting way.
This is fundamentally a protein folding problem. Your liver makes a protein called alpha-1 antitrypsin. Its main job is to go to the lungs and act as a sort of shield, protecting the delicate lung tissue from enzymes released by neutrophils.
An anti-enzyme.
Exactly. But in this disease, there's a mutation, usually the PyZ mutation, that causes the protein to be folded wrong. It's misshapen.
So it gets stuck in the factory?
It gets stuck in the endoplasmic reticulum of the hepatocyte. It can't get out. So the liver cells get clogged with these globules of junk protein, which are toxic and cause liver damage and cirrhosis.
And meanwhile, the lungs are screaming for help because their shield never arrived.
Right. The lungs have no protection against those enzymes, which just chew up the elastic tissue. So these patients develop severe emphysema, lung destruction, and liver cirrhosis. It's a devastating double whammy.
Section 8, cholestasis and biliary tract disease. This is all about problems with the outflow of bile.
Cholestasis. Literally, bile stands still. For whatever reason, bile isn't flowing. This causes two major symptoms: jaundice, the yellowing of the skin and eyes from bilirubin buildup,
And pruritus, itching. The itching sounds maddening.
It's caused by bile salts depositing in the skin and irritating nerve endings. Patients will scratch themselves until they bleed. It can be the most debilitating symptom.
There are two autoimmune diseases here that sound very similar but are very different. PBC and PSC. Let's separate them.
Okay. Primary biliary cholangitis, or PBC, is almost exclusively a disease of middle-aged women. It's a 9-to-1 female predominance.
And what's it attacking?
It is a very specific autoimmune attack on the intrahepatic small bile ducts, the tiny little ducts inside the liver.
And there's a very specific antibody for it, right?
Yes, the anti-mitochondrial antibody, or AMA. It's present in about 95% of patients. If you have a middle-aged woman with itching and a high alkaline phosphatase on her blood test, you check the AMA.
So that's PBC. What about primary sclerosing cholangitis, or PSC?
PSC is almost the mirror image. It's a disease of younger men, and it attacks the entire biliary tree, both the small ducts inside the liver and the large ducts outside the liver. It causes inflammation and lays down scar tissue that constricts the ducts.
They call it onion skin fibrosis on the biopsy.
You see these concentric layers of scar tissue around the bile duct, like an onion. And on imaging, like an ERCP, the ducts look beaded. You see segments of narrowing, then dilation, then narrowing again.
And the big clinical link here is with inflammatory bowel disease.
A very strong association with ulcerative colitis. About 70% of patients with PSC also have UC. If a patient with UC starts having abnormal liver enzymes, you have to worry about PSC.
And the long-term risk with PSC is cancer.
A significantly increased risk of cholangiocarcinoma, bile duct cancer. It's a nasty complication.
Speaking of nasty, let's talk gallstones. Cholelithiasis.
Incredibly common. There are two main flavors. Cholesterol stones are yellow-green and make up the vast majority in the West. Pigment stones are black or brown and are made of bilirubin.
Who gets cholesterol stones? The textbook lists the famous 4Fs.
Female, 40, fat, and fertile. It's a bit of a caricature, but it highlights the risk factors. Estrogen and progesterone increase cholesterol secretion into bile, and obesity does the same.
And the complications are things like cholecystitis, inflammation of the gallbladder, or the stone getting stuck and obstructing the whole system.
Right, which can cause pancreatitis if it blocks the pancreatic duct. It's a mechanical problem with inflammatory consequences.
Section 9. Circulatory disorders. We said flow determines fate. What happens when the heart fails?
Specifically, if the right side of the heart fails, it can't pump blood forward effectively. The blood backs up into the venous system, into the vena cava, and down into the liver. The liver gets engorged with blood. It gets congested.
It literally swells up.
It does. It becomes enlarged and tender. And if you slice it open on autopsy, you see this mottled red and pale pattern, the classic nutmeg liver.
Nutmeg liver. I love how pathologists label things based on what's in their spice rack.
It's a vivid description, though. The red spots are the congested zone 3 areas, which are full of backed up blood. The paler areas are the less congested zone 1 and 2.
And what if you have shock? A sudden catastrophic drop in blood pressure from a car accident or sepsis.
The flow drops precipitously. The cells that are furthest from the blood supply die first. And who are they?
Zone 3 again.
Zone 3 again. You get hemorrhagic central lobular necrosis. It's predictable. The anatomy dictates the pattern of injury.
Finally, section 10, tumors of the liver.
We should start with the benign ones because they are extremely common. The cavernous hemangioma is just a tangle of blood vessels. It's the most common benign mass found in the liver.
And the absolute rule is do not biopsy.
Right. It's a sponge full of blood. If you stick a needle in it, it can cause a catastrophic bleed. You see it on imaging, it looks characteristic, and you leave it alone.
Then there's the hepatocellular adenoma. This one is linked to the pill.
Yes, strongly associated with oral contraceptives. It's a benign tumor of hepatocytes. The main risk is that they can grow large and rupture, causing massive bleeding into the abdomen. So we often advise stopping the hormones or surgically removing them.
But the big killer, the main malignancy, is hepatocellular carcinoma, or HCC.
HCC is the primary cancer of liver cells themselves. And the key context, the most important thing to know, is that it almost never pops up in a healthy liver. It arises in a background of chronic injury.
It grows out of cirrhosis.
Almost always. The constant cycle of cell death and regeneration year after year, driven by a virus or alcohol or a NASH, eventually leads to a mistake. The chronic inflammation causes DNA damage, and the rapid regeneration increases the odds of a critical mutation sticking.
Dysplasia becomes carcinoma.
That's the sequence.
And is there a blood test we can use to screen for it?
Alpha-fetoprotein, or AFP, is a tumor marker we can watch in patients with cirrhosis. If it starts to rise, we get worried about HCC.
But here is the curveball Robin throws at the end. If you find a tumor, or multiple tumors, in the liver, statistically, it's probably not liver cancer.
That is correct. By far the most common malignancy found in the liver is metastasis, cancer that started somewhere else, like the colon, the breast, or the lung, and has spread to the liver.
Why does everything spread to the liver?
Go back to the very beginning. The architecture. The liver filters 1.5 liters of blood every minute. It has that dual blood supply, it's a rich, fertile field, and it acts like a sieve.
So a cancer cell breaks off a tumor in the colon.
It travels up the portal vein and gets stuck in the hepatic capillary bed. The liver catches the metastases. It's a feature of its own design.
Wow. We've covered a massive amount of ground today, from the hexagonal lobule to the tragedy of cirrhosis. How do we synthesize all of this?
For me, the liver is a study in this deep tension between resilience and vulnerability. It is designed to take a beating. It has enormous functional reserve. You can lose 80% of it and still function. It filters our trash and keeps us alive. But its Achilles heel is its physical structure.
Yeah.
Once you break the scaffold, once you let that stellate cell lay down that chicken wire fibrosis, you disrupt the flow. And when you disrupt the flow, you lose the function. The architecture is everything.
It's the silence that sticks with me.
That is the most dangerous part. The silence of the liver. You can have hepatitis C for 30 years or NASH for 20 years and feel absolutely nothing. By the time you turn yellow or your belly swells with the sites, the war is often lost, the damage is structural, and by that point, irreversible.
Which is why understanding the mechanism is so important. It highlights why we screen high-risk people, why we care about those liver enzymes on a routine blood test. It's our only window into that silent battle.
Precisely.
Okay, for everyone listening, here is your call to action. Do not just let this wash over you like plasma in the space of Dissy. Go to Robbins and Cotran and Underwood's Pathology. Open the book. Find the diagrams of the acinus versus the lobule. Look at the micrograph of the chicken wire fibrosis.
Solidify that mental map. When you see the images for yourself, the stories we told today will lock into place, and you will understand liver disease on a much deeper level.
Thank you for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone.